Hey everyone, it's Chow here, and today we are going to go over the different types of selection, so let's get started. Okay, so this topic is pretty straightforward, I think, but there are usually three different types of selection that they make you sort of get to know or memorize in an intro classroom, and that's directional selection, diversifying selection, or stabilizing selection. And these three are pretty key, so try to get to know them and try to get to be able to apply them, and we'll go through each of these individual ones in pretty moderate detail. So the first one is directional selection. Now, directional selection is the favoring of individuals that vary in one direction from the mean. So you have the mean over here, you're favoring individuals in one extreme or the other extreme. That's directional selection. The other one is diversifying selection. So diversifying selection, or it's also sometimes known as disruptive selection, is a situation where you have selection that actually acts on the extremes and actually reduces the mean. So you have the mean right here, and then you have your populations over here that are being selected for, and populations over here that are also being selected for, but the mean is kind of selected against, if I may. And therefore, over time, through diversifying or disruptive selection, this type of selection will cause the mean to basically decrease. There we go. So diversifying selection or disruptive selection favors both extremes and causes the mean to decline over time. The next type of selection is stabilizing selection. Stabilizing selection is kind of the opposite of diversifying selection, and it's a situation where there's going to be the favoring of the mean. So you have the mean right here, and then you have the other traits that are on one extreme over here and then on the other extreme over here. These are going to be over here and here and here. They're going to be selected against, but the mean is going to be selected for. So you should see an increase in the mean over time if it's a stabilizing situation. And you can see it pretty clearly in this particular diagram over here, where on one hand you have your original population that's over here in this dotted blue line, and through directional selection, remember, it's going to be favoring individuals that vary in one direction from the mean. So it's going to be favoring individuals that are on one extreme from the mean. And you can see that that's directional selection. Diversifying selection is selection of the extremes and a decline in the mean. So you can see over here that from the original population, we see an increase in sort of the extreme characteristics or the extreme traits and a decline in the population of the mean, so the mean trait over here. So you can see there's a gradient. It's selecting one extreme of the gradient or the other extreme of the gradient, actually both of them together, but selecting against the mean. So that's diversifying selection. The last one is stabilizing selection, and this one I think is pretty straightforward too. Again, stabilizing selection is favoring the mean, so you're basically selecting over time to increase the amount of individuals that show the mean trait or the mean characteristic. So if you have a gradient over here, directional selection is going to be selecting for one extreme. Diversifying selection, aka disruptive selection, is going to be selecting for both extremes, and then stabilizing selection is going to be selecting for the mean. So if you look at a situation with given numbers, you can actually tell which type of selection it is, and this is something that's often important for the exam. So if you look at this particular population over here, you have 90 individuals, let's say over time, that become big A, 8 individuals that are big A, little a, and 2 individuals that are little a. You can see that one direction of the extreme is selected for, whereas the other ones aren't really selected for at all. So one extreme over here, something like this, that ends up in a directional selection situation. On the other hand, you have diversifying or disruptive selection, which again is selecting both extremes at the same time, so like over here. And you can see that in this situation, the mean is going down. So there's very very small population of individuals with that mean characteristic and lots in the extreme characteristic cases. So selecting against the mean for the extremes, and you should be able to see why this is a disruptive or diversifying selection situation. And finally, we have stabilizing selection, which is just choosing the mean. So favoring the mean, that's this over here. You should see over time an increase in the amount of the individuals that show the mean characteristic or mean trait, and a decline in individuals that show the more extreme characteristics. So that's directional selection, diversifying selection, as well as stabilizing selection, and these are some of the common types of selection that you'll find in an intro classroom. So I would get to know the definitions first of all, graphically see how that's different, and then finally be able to determine and look at a population like this and say, oh, well, there's 90 of big A, 8 of big A, little a, 2 of little a, which type of selection it is. And if you can do that, I think you will be pretty set for the exam. So once again, thank you for watching, and best of luck studying, and best of luck on the exam, everyone.